is, with the authorities that the chairman and the committee and the Congress gave us a couple of years ago, is I and the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, along with a small group of people, are driving a rigorous, thorough, and painful review of the entire communication electromagnetic capabilities of the U.S. Army, of which WIN-T is one part of, because we have the same concerns. Frankly, my concern is these systems may or may not work in the conditions of combat that I envision in the future with this changing character of warfare. Because of what you just cited, line of sight, electromagnetic spectrum, the inability to operate on the move, the inability to operate in large, dense, complex urban areas or complex terrain. And there's a whole series of other things. And it is fragile, and it is vulnerable. So we're taking a very, very, very deep, hard, and wide look. We've probably got about 6 weeks or so, because what I want to do is make sure I can get it into any changes to this cycle, the markups that we can, if we need to. There's piece parts of it that work very well. There's others that not so good. And we're taking a hard look. And as you may or may not be aware, I've received a letter from the House with 176 signatures on it, and a letter from the Senate with several signatures on it, asking me to accelerate that program. I'm not going to accelerate it until I'm convinced it will work in combat against the enemies of our country that may be coming in the future. So that's kind of where we stand right now. But I owe you and this committee and others a rigorous review within about 4 to 6 weeks or so.
Thank you, General. I'm aware of those letters. My first priority is delivering functional systems to our warfighters on the front lines. My second priority is good value for our taxpayers. You know, the political implications of these contracts in members' districts are a very low priority compared to those for me, as I'm sure they are for you as well. We've spent about $6 billion so far on WIN-T, haven't we?
That's correct.
If the program's not working, it doesn't seem, as you say, like we should be accelerating more money into that program until we can get it to work, or we can find a replacement. Is that a fair assessment?
Correct, and that's where we're at, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what parts of it could be accelerated or brought online, others that we need to not, continue to put good money after bad, and make sure that the system as a whole, a holistic review of the system, is something that is going to be effective in what we think will be a dynamic combined arms maneuver fight on a very, very highly contested and lethal battlefield.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the effort you've put into not just these kind of communications programs we've discussed before, the distributed common ground system and its problems. You were discussing earlier some of the issues with small arms that the Army has had. I want to encourage you to continue to use those authorities. Most of these problems arose long before you took office, but I want to encourage you to continue to try to address them and resolve them at the speed that our warfighters need, not the speed of bureaucrats in Washington. I want to turn briefly to the European Reassurance Initiative. I know you've taken it very seriously. I'm encouraged by the hill-to-toe deployments we've seen of armored BCTs as part of the initiative. Do you think a permanent armored BCT presence would be preferable, though, to a perpetual state of deployment?
My recommendation, my preference, for a lot of reasons, and we have gone through 16 years of war where we conditioned as an institution COPs and FOBs, and some of those had pretty significant quality of life capabilities. Others were very austere. There were many COPs up in Afghanistan or Iraq that were not very well outfitted at all. But my point in saying what I said about being miserable is that we have got to train ourselves and condition ourselves for a type of war in which you are unlikely to have this steady stream of continued logistics beyond perhaps water, ammunition, food, and some medical. But all these other things, you know, chew huts, hot showers every day, sleeping in a bed, and so on and so forth, those will probably not be available if we fight against a highly competitive, dynamic, regional, or near-peer power. The land battle will be unbelievably violent, and units will have to move every hour or two just to survive. And logistics and lines of communications will be cut off. And units are going to have to be able to be independent of thought and mind. Your communications are going to be degraded. It is going to be significant, and we need to train to that, and that's exactly how we've shifted our training in the last couple of years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here today. I want to quickly ask about the importance of our non-military agencies' programs to the Army's mission. I've asked every combatant commander the following question, and to a person, they've almost all given the same answer. General Miley, would a significant reduction in funding to the State Department and other non-defense security agencies and programs make the Army's job of defending America easier or harder?
Well, Senator, I'm not going to comment on funding levels for other agencies.
Not asking you to.
I would just say that we in the Army, or we in the military, you know, the armies don't go to wars. Nations go to wars. And we need and require in combat operations, and most importantly, to secure the gains of combat operations, secure the peace, so to speak, we need the State Department, USAID, FBI, Commerce, CIA, all these other agencies, because the military doesn't do things alone. We do it as part of an interagency and joint team and an allied team.
Thank you very much, General. You know, I agree. The administration is seeking nearly a 30% reduction in the Department of State and USAID. Our military is critically important to our security, but we can't forget that non-military programs are also critical enablers of our military so that you can do your job and so America can do its job. I want to ask you another question, and that is about the WIN-T system. I understand there's already been some conversation about it. I know that there were significant problems with the first version, delays, but that those seem to be solved in the 2.0 version of this, and more to the point that there is no obvious substitute. This is the only communications program that is available for the Army that works on the move. And so the question I have relates to this. General, you said several times that on the future battlefield, it is imperative that soldiers keep moving. And you told the Association of U.S. Army that at their annual meeting last year that in the Army of the future, if you stay in one place longer than 2 or 3 hours, you will be dead. But as I understand it, under the current timeline, it's going to take the Army about 20 years to fully field the upgraded WIN-T system. And in 20 years, that upgraded system is likely to be obsolete. So given your comments about the importance of constant mobility, the fact that this is our communications under those, in a circumstance where we've got to have a lot of mobility, why is the Army taking so long to field this piece of equipment?
Well, you missed some previous comments, but right now it's under a rigorous review that's being led by the senior leadership of the Army, the Secretary and the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. And I have concerns about not only WIN-T, but WIN-T is a subset of a larger network of systems. And I have concerns about its interoperability, line of sight to operate in complex terrain, its survivability and vulnerability to enemy systems, its ability to operate on the move. The bottom line is I have some serious, hard questions that have not yet been satisfactorily answered as to whether this is going to work. And I believe I'll come to that resolution within the next 6 weeks or so. And like I told Senator McCain, I'll be happy to, and I intend to report out to you on the status of that. So I am reluctant to accelerate anything unless I know this thing's going to work. On the second part of it is why is it taking so long? I mean, that's one of my concerns, is a system that's not going to get fielded. It's already been in development for 10 years. A lot of this stuff's already out of date. So the entire acquisition approach, especially in information technologies, we need to review that. It's one thing to build rolled homogeneous steel and guns and tanks and vehicle systems, but the technological speed of advance in the commercial sector on information technologies is far more rapid than anything that the government's acquisition system is capable of handling. So by the time we even come up with requirements and start doing prototyping and experiments and tests, these systems are already out of date. So there's a fundamental issue in the IT world. It's not just WIN-T, it's much broader than that, that it causes me to be skeptical from an acquisition and procurement standpoint on WIN-T in particular, but other systems involved in it as well.
Well, I appreciate that, General, and I appreciate our responsibility to try to make the procurement system work better and work better for you, particularly in an area where there's a lot of innovation and change over time. I also assume, and I'm glad you're looking at this, that if the WIN-T system is working and we don't have another substitute, that we will make a decision and then try to move quickly on it one way or the other.
Right.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. I appreciated Senator King's comments talking about small arms and the need for modernization and the fact that our 5.56 doesn't penetrate Russian body armor. I think that was a really important point that was brought out at my subcommittee hearing, and one of the reasons I think many of us will agree the need to prioritize small arms modernization in this year's NDAA. So General Milley, once the Army does settle on a caliber, then would you rather have something that could be specifically built for our infantry forces and the Army at large, or would you accept something that could be purchased off the shelf?
I don't know that the two of those are mutually exclusive. There are systems out there today on the shelf that with some very minor modifications could be adapted to munitions that we're developing at Fort Benning that could be used to penetrate these sappy plates that our adversaries are developing. Mm-hmm. So there's it's not necessarily an either-or proposition on that one. I think there's weapons out there that we can get in the right caliber that can enhance the capability of the infantry soldier.
That's good, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think there could be some potential savings if we are looking at systems that could be modified, taken off the shelf, and used for our soldiers. I think that would be something that would be very beneficial to our forces. Retired General Scales testified at that subcommittee hearing, and he spoke about a weapon that could fill the role of both the machine gun and the rifle, a light machine gun and the basic rifle. So is the need for the machine gun, would that be a higher priority than that of just a basic rifle? Or would they be at the same level of priority?
No, I mean, they're both very important, and they complement each other. I think what he's talking about is what the Marines are adopting is the M27. Mm-hmm. We're taking a hard look at that and probably going to go in that direction as well, but we haven't made a final decision on it. But you know, infantry squads, infantry platoons, they got to have an automatic weapon for suppression. They've got to have the individual weapon as well. So you need both. It's not one or the other. You have to have both in order to be effective in ground combat. Absolutely.
Thank you, General, very much. Today I'm introducing a bill with Senator Gillibrand that would require each branch of the military to educate service members on sexual assault prevention before they actually leave for boot camp. And if they choose to do the delayed entry program, which many of our young men and women do. The bill also states that those classes should be conducted in person and cover the proper use of social media. So we would actually have a live human being standing in front of those young men and women presenting that class, rather than taking a computer course or just reviewing PowerPoint slides on their own. Sexual assault really is a societal problem, and we really do need to have continuous education on that, and we do that once we have members in the service, but we really do need to start as soon as possible. And what more can we do to curb military sexual assault in the Army?
Well, Senator, I think we are doing a lot, and we're continuing to adapt more. One, we're working with private-public partnerships with folks like within the National